When we first started thinking about going off the grid, now we've been off the grid for over 3 years, almost 4 years now, family of five, three teenagers. And so we initially had this concept quite a few years ago, went to the girls and was like, what do you think about it? And the question was not, well, how are we going to keep the house warm if we're living off the grid? The question from them was not, how are we going to run the refrigerator living off the grid? The question was, are we going to be able to have high-speed internet? And actually, it's a great question. In a very modern sense, it is a connective tissue for all of us, and particularly for our kids, where they've grown up with the internet. And so, ironically enough, living off grid still requires us to have a great deal of connection with the community. And I think that's important because a lot of times in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, like living off grid kind of meant living in isolation. And we do something far different from that. We live very far from isolation. And the reason I say this is because connectivity, reliability, the internet is really important when it comes to facilitating a modern day off-grid lifestyle. If that's what you're choosing to do and you're still an active part of society and the communities that you exist in, which we very much are. And so this is a long-winded introduction for me to say that I came across the articles recently, the last couple of days or so, where the Starlink system has kind of usurped the Verizon system and the FAA. And Elon Musk, whether he's meddling or not, whether it's corruption or not, whether it's fraud or not, is introducing his product into a system that needs to be rebuilt, that clearly needs to be rebuilt, but overriding a pre-existing contract by Verizon. And I just thought this was super interesting. I kind of want to play the video if I can get into this, because the first question living off grid for us and our family was, are we going to have high-speed internet? And at the time, I get on the computer, there's not a lot of options. There's not a lot of options 4 or 5 years ago when we start planning this for reliable, off-speed, somewhat affordable, hopefully. I mean, that's sort of been, efficiency and affordability was some of the mantra in us designing and certainly purchasing this land because it was really affordable where we were, and designing sort of a prefabricated house to a certain degree that we're really comfortable in and it fits our lifestyle. But the internet is really important. And so we originally got Starlink. I was super excited. We got Starlink before they even offered it for residential services. We got the RV version. That was our first version of Starlink. It was a smaller satellite setup, or it's got the satellite receiver. It's kind of like this rectangular. I'll do another video just on the Starlink. But long story short, we have 2 Starlinks, and we don't use either one of them anymore. I keep them. That discontinued the service, but I keep them just in case. I mean, you never know. I think living off grid, one of the things it has taught me is about redundancy. Redundancy in your power setup, redundancy in your utilities, redundancy in making sure that you have backups. Even from a computer, I'm terrible about this, but I should back up all my stuff. I should have redundancy. So that way, if something goes wrong in one arena, then you still have the opportunity to make some form of recovery and to build off of what you learned. And so we had Starlink for a couple of years, and it was unreliable. It was just, and part of the reason why I could get into it, but the way that we had it was ground mounted for us. And so in New England, we got inclement weather. And when the weather was bad, when it was rainy, when it was overcast, when it was snowy, when we needed the internet most, basically, because the kids were stuck at home, we didn't have it. And it had to be going and clearing off the satellite, making sure this heated satellite dish would still function and face the area of the sky that the satellites are rotating through. So it's always moving. It's always tricky. It's a moving target. We do live half behind our house is all wooded. And so no matter where we situated our Starlink, and it's got a long cord, but it's not that long. No matter where we situated it, it just wasn't picking up consistently on the satellite signal. Maybe that was a region thing. Maybe it's better. We even tried it, and now it's been well over a year. And we did switch to Verizon. So I kind of got this firsthand experience, not sponsored by either, just kind of having a firsthand experience with both and usability. And for the last year and a half, the Verizon system's been really reliable for us. So when I came across this video, now let's get over to it. Now we could start to play it. This is what I came across. This was an article form. This is kind of what everybody's talking about. Just it's got a political undertone to it, but again, living off the grid, that's not a Democratic thing. It's not a Republican thing. Living off the grid is energy independence. I think that's just a pragmatic, smart thing to do from my perspective. And for 3.5 years, it's kind of proved that theory right. So we're kind of in the thick of it.
2 years after Verizon secured a $2 billion contract to upgrade the Federal Aviation Administration's IT infrastructure, the agency is now switching to SpaceX's Starlink.
Right.
In a post to X Monday, Starlink CEO Elon Musk said
So what is this quote? Elon Musk puts out an X, whatever you call it, an X tweet. And it's the Verizon system's not working and it's putting air travelers at serious risk. I'm pretty sure that flying in the air at 30,000 feet and 600 miles an hour just has inherent risk. So like flying puts air travelers at serious risk. What we need is a comprehensive, reliable system. And I'm amazed that I don't know how many thousands of flights happen each day in the United States of America, in our country. God bless the air traffic controllers. What an incredible job that they're doing, because they've been organizing it all off of this perfunctory, dormant old system, apparently. And I don't disagree with that. It probably needs an update, but it feels like they've gone through the channels of what's the proper update to have, came to a conclusion, and now some unelected quasi-government official who also wields incredible corporate power is inserting his company into a process where it's a delicate process here. And it's concerning to me. And it's concerning to me anecdotally because, again, when we started living off grid and built this house, and it's like, well, high-speed internet, the kids, we got teenagers, high-speed internet. We're not the FAA. We don't, this isn't life or death for us. This is streaming Netflix. This is easy stuff. We couldn't find the consistency and reliability in Starlink when we started with this, enough so that we switched to Verizon. And I'm not saying that the FAA should choose one or the other. This is probably, I would hope this would be an entirely new infrastructure and system that they're building comprehensively. So to unify the air traffic control, not just in our country, but maybe in a larger sense, because I would think that the safety of the travelers traveling at 30,000 feet at 600 miles an hour is tantamount to any like squabble, consumerism squabble or corporate squabble that might be out there. But I don't know that to be true right now. And so I'm concerned that when the Verizon system is not working, that's not a real comprehensive statement of any fact. So I'm curious about that. But I digress. Let's carry on here.
The Verizon system isn't working, and it's putting air travelers at risk. The FAA confirmed Monday the Starlink terminals would be used to assist air traffic controllers at 2 stations in Alaska. Last week, Musk approved the shipment of 4,000 Starlink terminals.
So it's the same terminal. We have these terminals. This is the terminal I got. The first terminal, like I said, was an RV terminal because they didn't have the residential one available in our area when we first signed up for it. I got all the receipts for this. I got all the documents on this. The second one we got was the residential system that looks just like what you're seeing in this video now. And it's a heated system, and it tracks the satellite, so it moves around. A lot of moving parts, a lot of things that are unreliable, a lot of things that don't work. And again, it's fine if you're using it, if you're out on a sailboat, if you're traveling in your RV, if you're in a battle zone in Ukraine, and this is the most portable, quickest, easiest to set up, reliable. It's amazing. The system could be amazing. I'm not even knocking the Starlink system. I'm just saying, A, from a contractual standpoint, I think those things should have some merit and value. And B, from a redundancy standpoint, literally living off the grid as we are, having a redundancy in systems is critical to make sure that flow is uninterrupted, to make sure that safety is uninterrupted. And if you can't guarantee that, if I can't guarantee that by streaming a movie in my house, I've got concerns on how this is going to affect federal air travel.
For use by the FAA, with the administration confirming one terminal is already being used for testing at the FAA's Air Traffic Control Lab in Atlantic City,
Do they
New
stream
Jersey.
Netflix there?
Bloomberg reports the program will be
do.
called TDMX, with it being fully functional within 12.
Guys got to put X on everything, by the way. It's like everything has to be branded so that it traces back to that moniker.
To 18 months.
It's interesting.
It's not clear whether the FAA's use of Starlink terminals will complicate the administration's contract with Verizon.
And Verizon, I got my issues with Verizon. Right now, to be perfectly honest, just like probably pretty much everybody in our country, I got issues with a lot of things. There is no perfect system. There is no ideal solution. There is no romanticized version of what should happen. We're just trying to do the best we can. And again, just living life off the grid in the last 4 years, Verizon and their network and setup, both for our cell phone service and for our home internet, off-grid home internet, has been more reliable for us than Starlink. I don't know how to put it any more clearly than that. And if you have 3 teenagers, you know how important that is. Arguably more important than federal air. I don't know. Maybe it's a toss-up.
Verizon hasn't commented on the matter.
Yeah, of course they haven't commented.
The FAA's contract with Starlink comes while Musk leads efforts at the head of the department.
His kid there, I'll tell you what, that kid knows what's up. That kid knows what's up. I don't understand where there's three people in this photo. Again, this is not a Republican, this is not a Democrat. I live off the grid. I'm for energy independence. I'm for making decisions that empower you and your family and your life and give you the best chance of success, and not kowtowing to some of these monopolies, some of these national grid monopolies. But at the end of the day, we're beholden to them to a certain degree. We have to function to a certain degree in how this all plays out. That kid in the middle looks like he knows something, looks like he's onto something. If I was going to elect any of those 3, it would probably be that kid in the middle right there. Just saying.
Of Government Efficiency to make deep cuts in government spending, including staffing cuts at the FAA.
Which makes sense, because if you're going to make staffing cuts anywhere, you'd want it to be the people who are in charge of, I don't know, tens of thousands of people. How many people travel each year? It's probably hundreds of thousands. I mean, globally, it's got to be more than that. But let's make cuts to that part of the functioning government.
While details of the contract haven't been revealed.
While in the same sense promoting our own business to usurp another federal contract so that we can undermine the consistency of how our air travel might work.
It raises questions about potential conflicts of interest, as Musk has numerous business interests that are overseen by federal. It doesn't
raise the potential of conflict of interest. It is conflict of interest.
Agencies, with SpaceX being a private aerospace company relying heavily on government contracts. The move also comes amid a rise in deadly airplane incidents across the country in recent months.
I don't know if there's a rise. Is that true? Is there a rise? Is it a rise in deadly incidences, or are we? Do we hear more about it now? Do we see more about it now? It does kind of feel like we've had things happen.
Says it has long considered using Starlink technology to increase safety in remote areas. For Straight Arrow News, I'm Kara Rucker.
Case in point. I'm a remote area. Oh, raise your hand if you're a remote area. I'm a remote area. You weren't consistent for me for internet, for Netflix, for Disney Plus, for Hulu. You weren't consistent for me for any of that. So now you're going to run air traffic control. Again, I don't care what party you vote for. Just look at what's happening. Look at the facts on the ground and say that, like, I've lived this. I'm not saying that my situation is at all equal to, symbolizes, stands for, can be interpreted as something that would happen at a government agency or anything like that. All I'm saying is not too many people have the unique experience that we have, where we've been dependent on this type of a communication, on this type of an internet connection, in a static sense. Like, some people are on boats, cruise ships, like things like that, airplanes, they have this stuff. But like, we've been using Verizon, we've been using Starlink. And I honestly, if I was going to implement a system within the government without creating an entirely new one that's just kind of like untappable and unencumbered and safe, I would do both. Why would you not have 2 or 3 systems? That's literally why we keep our Starlink around. It's not for the nostalgia of having our Starlink satellite. It's not so I have a charcuterie board that I could put and eat fancy things off of. It's at some point, if the Verizon internet goes down, because nothing's perfect, right? At some point, it's going to go down. And at some point, if and when it goes down, it'd be nice to fire up something else to give us some internet. So I don't know, maybe in the FAA, if one of the systems goes down, I am assuming there is a backup there. I am assuming they got a 9-volt battery somewhere tucked away inside the FAA that if the system goes down, they're not out of juice from an internet perspective or from a connectivity perspective. But when I witnessed that group of individuals, pilots, flight control staff, just everybody in the administration at the FAA, when I saw that group of people land every plane right when 9/11 happened, instantly, wherever they were, in any airport, big and small, that shows you, it goes to show you that in the face of tragedy and in the face of adversity, people come together. People are going to come together. And when they do, when we come together, we want to make sure we have every opportunity to transition to safety from that tragic situation. And so whatever system was in place after 9/11, that worked. I mean, that was an incredible coordinated effort by, I can't even imagine how many public, private, government institutions and affiliations. And we made it work then. So why wouldn't we build off of that system? Why wouldn't we figure out what we've learned in that amount of time and take into effect what's on the ground now and what's working and apply that to potentially the most significant public safety network that we have in our country? And I don't know. It just seems to make sense to me. So here we are. I don't know anything. I don't know anything about this. I'm not left. I'm not right. I'm off the grid. I'm energy independent. I promote that. I actually don't think everybody should be off the grid. I think we should microgrid our communities. I think that we have the ability to produce and create and outsource all kinds of power in new and different ways now, bidirectionally, meaning it's flowing out, it's flowing in. And we're in a new frontier with power, and we're also in a new frontier with the internet. And so I think that we need to really be really careful of how we're applying, of how we're creating these contracts, we're awarding these contracts, and then we're applying them into the logic and the fabric of our utility in our country here. And so I get concerned when those things are voided for no real good reason. And I feel like safety is getting overridden here. And I had to say something about it because having used Starlink, having used Verizon, it's in no way comparable what we're doing to what's happening, but at least gives me the platform to share our experiences and to say at the end of the day, Verizon's been more consistent for us, flat out, for our internet. And we should probably have a redundancy in systems because that's what we do here at the off-grid farm. We don't rely on one thing. We try to have backups, and even those backups fail. So then we've got contingencies. So have your plan, have your backup, have your contingency. Hope you guys have enough power for your day, inside and out. I'm Jonathan the Painter. I'm going to be back with another. I got thoughts on all this stuff, so I'll see you soon.